What's up, parents of autistic kids? It's Lysander Caperta here, and in this video, I will be compiling a bunch of my YouTube shorts in which I advised parents of autistic kids on various matters relating to autism, masking, and other things like that. So, if you are a committed parent of an autistic child or teenager, watch my video and learn. It is very important to correctly identify children as being autistic and babies as being autistic at a very young age. If you or your autistic child is having a hard time accepting your autism, maybe you've just received a diagnosis or whatnot, I'm not sure of your own personal circumstances, but if you or your child is having a hard time accepting your autism, think about it like this. Think to yourself, is my brain bad? Do I hate my brain? Do I think something is wrong with my brain? If the answer to that is no, then you must understand, well, autism is a part of that. You have an autistic brain. But you don't think your brain is bad, right? You don't think you have a messed up brain or a broken brain, but you have an autistic brain, right? Therefore, autism is not bad. Autism is not broken. Autism is not messed up. Autism is what's up. Is autism therapy or autism treatment good or bad for autistic kids? Well, with complex issues with many and varied opinions and many and varied variables such as this one, there's no definitive yes or no answer to all. Some are good and some are bad. However, I can tell you one thing, which is universally a bad thing. If the so-called therapy or treatment attempts to make an autistic child appear in a more normal manner, i.e. to mask their autism, then it is not treatment, it is mistreatment. How do you prevent masking in autistic people? Number one is early diagnosis. Number two is removing of training that exists within autism therapies that causes autistic people to mask, autistic kids to mask. Number three is emphasizing autistic identity for autistic kids and giving autistic kids access to autistic community and the ability to be themselves as autistic people within social contexts. Number five, education about masking for both autistic and non-autistic people, children and adults. Number six, teaching kids to make informed choices about peers and who to socialize and associate with, and informed choices about where to find safe spaces. Number seven, regularly check in with your child to see if they're masking. And number eight, regularly try to improve their communicational toolbox. What is the importance of autistic identity? Well, think about it very simply. If you don't know yourself, how can you possibly expect to be yourself? You see, being autistic is inextricably intertwined with all other aspects of our identity, and it is one of the oldest aspects of our identity, having been there since, or rather before, birth. A person who is autistic has been autistic since before they were even born. Therefore, autism is inextricably tied to the other parts of a person's identity. And when a person masks their autism, they'll mask the other parts of themselves. So in order to be yourself, you have to know yourself. So that is why autistic identity is so important for kids, teenagers, adults, every autistic person. I just want to state that for the record, this is not a part of autism. The DSM-5 defines autism primarily as A, restricted and repetitive behaviors, and B, deficits in social communication and interaction. Ignoring the negative language used to describe our beautiful neurotype, I'm not sure about the repetitive behaviors, that's a separate topic, But deficits in social communication and interaction is not a part of autism. And I just want to say that for the record, it is not a part of autism. It's a social difference, not a social deficit. Many people who work with autistic people, curricula directed at autistic people, just society in general, has this messaging for autistic people that we ought to follow expected behavior and normal behavior and socially acceptable behavior. The problem with that is that many autistic behaviors in the current state of where society is today are not socially acceptable. A good number of them are not. And my message to autistic and non-autistic people alike is this: the mental health and well-being of autistic people is more important than the expectations of society. We've gotten this down for so many other things. Why haven't we gotten it down for autism? I made a video which briefly touched on the topic of autistic people in distress. Many observational models of external understandings of autism, as conducted by neurotypical autism researchers, frequently only understand autism from the perspective of autistic people in distress, which is inevitable considering that in a world not built for us, autistic people will experience high rates of distress. As the world begins to adjust to autistic people's ways of being more and more, autistic people will hopefully experience distress less and less. The diagnostic criteria and the understanding of autism from both neurotypical researchers and autistic perspectives will need to change in response to this. An example of an autistic distress response that is frequently pointed to as an autistic trait by researchers is catastrophism, i.e., turning everything into a big deal. Well, let me explain to you as an autistic person why it may seem that way. The reason why is because when you live in a world where there's constant microaggression and invalidation of your neurotype, and where your neurotype is seen as bad, and where you feel like you have to hide who you are, everything feels like a big deal. Is it any surprise then that autistic children or even adults react in these kinds of ways? An important thing that a lot of parents don't know about their autistic kids is about half of autistic kids and teenagers and people really have alexithymia. Alexithymia is difficulty or inability to understand or explain one's emotions. This is not directly due to autism, but can very commonly occur in autism. So you can't always expect your kid to be able to appropriately explain how they are feeling at all times. It's a skill that definitely needs to be developed much more in autistic people than in non-autistic people. And even then, the ways in which autistic kids and teenagers and people experience emotions are very different from the ways that non-autistic and non-alexithymic people experience emotions. So just some things to look out for. So I just wanted to make a few clarifying statements about what I said in the video, Autistic Man's Advice to Parents of Newly Diagnosed Autistic Kids. I think it goes without saying that any good parent of an autistic child should teach their kid how to self-advocate along with telling their child that they are autistic. This is becoming easier for non-speakers and those with higher support needs as facilitated communication becomes more popular and common among autistic people. And among autistic people who are capable of speech, it's very important to encourage the child to be self-aware, to learn about themselves, and to communicate their needs. And this can be helped and assisted in many different ways when the child is younger, such that it becomes automatic when the child becomes a teen and an adult. For parents that are interested in therapies for their autistic kids, I very, very, very strongly recommend an article that was life-changing for me when I read it called "My Family's Autism Services Are Working for Us, So We Will Probably Lose Them," written by Tara Vance and available on the website Neuroclastic. I strongly recommend that you read this article and you look at the author's analysis of therapy, for want of a better word, that she used for her child and how it worked for her child, and how this is actually, could be in the future, the default used for raising autistic kids in a world that is slowly becoming more accommodating of autistic people and more respectful of autistic people. So please do read that article. The best way to handle your autistic teenager's rebellion is to use it as an opportunity. An opportunity for what? To help your autistic teenager unmask. Make no mistake about it. Unmasking autism is a highly rebellious act. Unmasked autistic traits, unmasked, authentic, real, pure, true autism is very much out of line with the norms of society, oftentimes. Therefore, not only is it an excellent opportunity to get out that rebellious energy, but it's also an excellent opportunity to develop self-confidence and to develop strong mental and hopefully physical health in a teenager. And like I said in a previous video, if we continue to act not according to the way things are, but according to the way things should be, they will be. This is how you normalize traits of autism in a society that is still not yet accepting of traits of autism. We can make it, but only if we take it into our own hands. Two things you should not do to an autistic person. Number one is touch them. I can't speak for the entirety of the autistic community, but I can say factually that the vast majority of autistic people do not like being touched, especially if it's not from someone that they're very close to. Let them initiate touch. If they want to be touched or hugged, they'll initiate it. Also, keep it to a handshake at maximum. Number two, do not change an autistic person's plan or suggest a change of plan for an autistic person the same day of. Autistic people don't like that. Do not correct autistic or kinetic kids and teenagers for being who we are. Don't do it. The reason why is if you correct autistic kids or kinetic slash interest-based kids and teenagers for their traits associated with their neurotype, if you correct someone for their traits associated with their neurotype, you're correcting them for being who they are. You're teaching them that who they are is not correct. You're teaching them to think bad of themselves. Do not do that.